I passed your test. Fate has a twisted sense of humor, it seems. I suppose you think I'm some sort of monster. More so since I survived your ritual. You keep striking at me, and I just refuse to die decently. You're a poor liar, you know. It's kind of you to say so all the same. We must settle things between us somehow or other, or neither of us will get any work done. So, what will it be? Is that punishment meant for me or for you? And just like that, we're allies. I can't imagine it's so simple. I don't know what concession you want from me, Warden. I expect my word will not satisfy you. Indeed, I'd almost forgotten that. Thank you for the reminder. I think it's time we got to the point here. What do you want from me? I can't imagine that you spared my life in the Landsmeet by accident. You have some plan in mind. Fortunate for me, then, that I've always been a man to take chances. I'm hardly blind to the irony of this situation. All of this can rightly be called my fault. Whether or not you can do better remains to be seen. But if you can make this the end, Warden, I will follow you, I swear it. I suppose we'll see how long that lasts. We should speak no more of this at present. Time's wasting. Did you want something? Hate doesn't describe it. I've seen painted, masked lords beat an old farmer to death with riding crops. To this day, I don't know why. Is that hate? I saw good, sensible men fight armored chevaliers with nothing. No weapons, no armies, not even hope of success to see the occupation end. Is that hate? Nothing about war is right. It's a force of nature, like rain, or wind, or faith. It simply exists, and we deal with its consequences. My reasons weren't wrong. I wanted to defend my home. I made tactical errors, however. In any case, there's no use discussing this. We have much work left to do. Go ahead. He was my friend. If he'd wanted to conquer the Fade, I would have led the charge. I was hunting, well, poaching, to be entirely honest, when a boy my own age came stumbling out of the woods. He was so dirty, you'd have thought he'd been dug up out of the ground. He was bloody, exhausted, and obviously being hunted. I offered to take him to my father's camp. That's a story for another time, I'm afraid. I've gone on too long as it is. There are men who inspire such devotion that everyone around would lay down their lives for. And there are men who would come and go from this world, and no one notes it. What makes them so? Your guess is as good as mine. Merrick was remarkable. That's all I can say of him. He nearly did. Merrick was never one to avoid his duty. And given his preference, he would have acknowledged his son no matter the circumstance. But he had more than his honor to think of. It would have ruined Rowan, after all. She'd be reduced to a concubine in the eyes of our neighbors, and put Kaelin's status as heir in question. So Merrick made the hard choice. Eamon offered to raise the boy, and that was that. What do you think would have become of Alistair if Merrick had claimed him? He would have been the bastard prince and a continual reminder to Rowan of Merrick's infidelity. At least with Eamon, Alistair had a childhood. But we've been idle long enough. We should get moving. Go ahead. I suppose that depends on how much of the kingdom was left by then. Once the border was secure, the army would have regrouped to push back the Darkspawn in the south. We couldn't, especially after Ostagar. It wasn't an ideal plan, but it seemed necessary at the time. In any case, there's no use discussing this. We have much work left to do. Go ahead. Anora always did have a flair for the dramatic. She could have been a bard. Anora's a politician at heart. There's one thing she knows. It's how to move people. Is that a serious question? Is there someone else you know of who could stand up to the Landsmeet? But enough about Anora. We ought to get moving. Go ahead. Eamon is a shrewd man. He'll be advising the boy. They'll do all right, I suppose. Doing all right is not the same as doing well. Your friend may get good advice from Eamon, but he's weak. All the bands know it. You can see them. A pack of wild dogs waiting for a bone. The first chance they get, they'll pry concessions out of him. They'll pick at the throne until it's only a gilded chair with no power or authority at all. Anora, as you may have already noticed, is clever enough to manipulate the bands. She can make alliances and play them against one another to get what she wants. This discussion profits no one. I may be wrong. I will certainly hope so. By all means. Anora is a good queen. She has been for 5 years now. I am a bit, but she'll do well. I have to say that anyway, for if word gets back to her that I said otherwise, she'll be furious. In all seriousness, Anora is formidable. You should know that by now. They always have before. Few among the nobles have ever been under any illusions as to who really held power in Denerim. Anora is strong enough to endure. She may make a few mistakes along the way, but she'll survive them. But this isn't the time to discuss such things. By all means. So far as anyone could tell, she was the undisputed monarch of the whole world. She'd fall, skin her knees, and command them to stop stinging. It may have worked, too. Gwaran sits in between the Brazilian forest and the sea. It's far from the old Tevinter roads. The village by our keep was never even as big as Redcliffe. There are always a few children around. Charcoal burners, sons and daughters mostly, or the children of servants. They formed into noisy gangs in the courtyard for their games. But Anora never joined them. Perhaps it was. She read a great deal. She followed her mother like a shadow about the gardens. She practiced archery and sword play. She was never idle. Solitude isn't terrible, you know. She had a free reign over the woods. If you're expecting some particular insight into my daughter's character, I'm afraid I'm probably not the best source. I'm hardly impartial. I think you already know the answer to that. But this is not really the time or place to discuss my daughter. We have work to do. Go ahead. Of course.
If there's any...
I'm surprised. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised at your success. You beat me. Perhaps you can do this after all. It hardly matters now. I've certainly been mistaken about you before. Do you want something? I suppose I have a moment. Of course. Do you want something? I suppose I have a moment. Of course. Thanks. Do you want something? I suppose. Of course.